Hello, lovely people. Welcome. I hope you're having a beautiful day and thank you for joining me. Today, I wanted to chat a little bit about how I read over 30 books in about 30 days. That was a bit of a crazy challenge, but it was also a lot of fun. So yeah, if you're ready, just make yourself comfortable, get a nice drink, a cozy blanket, and let's dive in. So maybe to start with, why did I decide to do this challenge? So this dates back around mid-November of 2023, and then that spilled over into December. At the time, I was off work. I was really burned out, so I had no energy, no motivation to do anything, and it was not the best time, to be honest. So I was trying to find ways to get back to myself and regain that joy and that energy. I wanted to give myself a goal, like focus my attention on something, challenge myself a little bit. Gretchen Rubin, who is a writer that I really enjoy, talks about how sometimes when you're overwhelmed, indeed you need to give you some space to get some rest, to do fewer things, but at other time it's actually helpful to ask more of yourself. And so I couldn't do anything less basically because I was not doing much at all apart from resting and trying to recover from burnout. So I decided to try this approach of asking more of myself and launched into this challenge. I think I also wanted to prove myself something. I'm still honestly not completely sure what came over me with this. Yeah, that kind of gave me something to focus on and like, yeah, one activity a day that I could do and get some sense of accomplishment. So how did it go? Basically, going from the biggest reading slump to reading one book a day. Well, surprisingly, it went quite well. I have to caveat that again, I was off work, so I had a lot of free time and I was not doing much outside of it. So it was kind of easy in terms of time for me to be doing that. And obviously if someone wants to try this challenge and they have a full-time job and they're working or they have kids to take care of, other responsibilities, it would be a lot more challenging. So it was still like very achievable and attainable for me at the time in the circumstances that I had. But so what I did to get started, I just kind of went through my bookshelf and picked a bunch of short books that I was interested in reading, but I hadn't gotten around to. And so I had this big pile of books that I wanted to read that I knew I could get through in a few hours that seemed kind of manageable. And so every day I could just like pick one depending on what mood I was on. And that was really, really helpful for me to have this pile of just like not having to put too much thought into it. Another thing is that I really allowed myself to focus on quantity versus quality. So there were some days where I was not super focused or not super motivated, and I just like picked the easiest book I could and just went through it. And if I didn't remember anything after it, that was okay. Again, it was like a bit, it sounds contradictory to the whole thing, but that was a way for me to keep going and just like, you just need to get through the pages and that's the only thing you have to do. And that was really helpful for me in this context of burnout. Another thing that was really helpful is that I, again, on top of short books, I also picked some graphic novels or comic books that are very kind of easy and quick to go through. So when I had a day when I had, I don't know, like some medical appointment or something that would be using all of my spoons for the day, I had very, very quick books that I could get to again and very easy, like having the images and all that kind of help with my concentration as well. And another thing is like I also relied on audiobooks, so I could do other things at the time or kind of just like rest and listen to a good story or do a puzzle or things like that. So kind of very, very relaxing. So I had this kind of mix of formats, length as well. Like there is some like a few longer books that I was really excited about. So one thing is like, if one day I managed to finish 2 books in the same day, then I had kind of a joker for another. I don't know if it's really how you use it in English. Basically in French it's just like kind of a wild card basically, or just like a free pass. So some days I would finish 2 books because I would read like a short one in written form, and then I would be finishing an audiobook that I had started like the day before or something. And so that happened a couple of times over the 30 days where there was like 1 or 2 days where I didn't read anything, but because I had finished 2 books on another day, then I gave myself that free pass. And then just another thing was trying not to wait until too late in the day, because otherwise I would be a bit stressed out thinking, oh, I still haven't read my book for the day, and it's still gonna be taking me likely like, well, the shorter ones like maybe 1 hour, but like others would still be a few hours. So again, trying to get that out of the way was a good mindset for me, and not procrastinating, because otherwise I would be going to bed very late or something. And I was quite happy that I was able to follow through with that and avoid procrastinating too much. Now that we've seen why I did it and how I did it, what was the result and the outcome. So it was a great experience. I had mostly a lot of fun doing it. Obviously there were some days where I just like was not feeling it, but having kind of that streak kind of pushed me to keep going, and it really helped with my burnout because first I was doing something that I love. I was spending time on the page or listening to a good story, so that was just like really nice, forcing myself to take that time for an activity that I love. At the same time, I was getting this feeling of accomplishment every day. When I was finishing a book, I was really happy with myself. It was like a small victory, and they were like piling up, and doing that every day really helped with regaining some kind of confidence in myself, and yeah, a little bit of energy, like mental energy, because I was getting something done. So that was really helpful in that sense as well. Overall, I think I read 34 books. I was like, oh, it's going so well. After the 30 days, maybe like I will extend, and I did for I think a few days. And then my family came over, and then it was the Christmas holidays and stuff, so it was not much more than 30 days, but it was still like very fun. Another benefit was that I managed to go through quite a few books from my physical TBR that likely otherwise I would still have not picked up. So that was like a nice bonus as well, just like going through those books, and there are some like that then I've decided to unhaul and not keep, well, decided to unhaul. They're still there, I will still show them to you, but they're in a pile that I need to get rid of at some point. So I'm not going to be keeping like a good chunk of them, and so it means that I have more space on my bookshelf for books that I actually love and want to have with me. Now about the reading slump. So during those 30 days, again, I was reading a lot more than I would have otherwise without this challenge. So this was really good. And as long as I did that, like when I had that objective of reading 1 book a day, I was sticking to it pretty religiously, as much as I could. And so I was reading a lot, it was great. Once I stopped, honestly, it kind of like the reading slump kind of came back again. Like I had family over, then it was Christmas, so there were like circumstances that means that I was not reading as much as I would have liked. But even today is like, what is it, 2 months after I finished or something, I'm still very like up and down. I have a ton of books that I want to get to, but I'm still struggling a little bit with making myself sit and read. So I might consider another challenge just to help me get through the pile or something. I don't know, maybe I'll do a reading vlog or something. So yeah, just wanted to caveat the whole thing, saying just like it was not a permanent cure to a reading slump. It was a fun thing for a limited period of time. And again, I read much more than I would have otherwise, But yeah, it didn't solve all my problems. It's not a miracle cure. It was just like a fun project. And I'm really glad that I did it still. Now moving on to the books that I actually read. So maybe starting with the two ones I don't have a physical copy of. The first one is a French graphic non-fiction book. It is called Les paupières des poissons, which translates as the fish eyelids. And it's written by Sébastien Moreau and illustrated by Fanny Vaucher. And it's, as I mentioned, like a non-fiction book about fish and all the incredible fun facts about fish. Basically like their intelligence, their ability to feel emotions, pain, and yeah, just like how actually like intelligent creatures they are. Like we have a lot of empathy for like dogs, cats, other mammals, but we disregard fish quite a bit. And so this book shines a light on, again, how the intellectual and emotional lives of fish are rich and super interesting. So I really love that book. I don't think it's been translated, so I don't think it would be available in another language than the French, unfortunately. The next one is Je suis bordélique, again another one that I read in French. This is from Einat Sarfati. I'm hoping that I'm pronouncing that semi-correctly. And it was translated from the Hebrew into French by Rosie Pinas Delprech. I think this author has been translated in quite a few languages. I don't know if this one is available in English, but I know it's at least available in Spanish, and it's likely that it will be translated. So basically Je suis bordélique translated, I was just like, I'm very messy. So what I was expecting from this book, it says from the back of the book that it's not a book about teaching you how to be tidy, which I was happy about. But I was expecting the book to be really about accepting your messiness and seeing what are the upside maybe of just like being messy, what are some potential positives. And I was quite disappointed, so maybe this is a bit of a spoiler, so if you want to read it, just like skip ahead. But yeah, basically it didn't fulfill my expectation and I was quite disappointed. It felt like it was just highlighting for 90% of the book how being messy is a nightmare and how it makes your life complicated and how being tidy would be much better. So that was not really the message I was hoping for. I mean, the last few pages try to kind of give a more positive spin, but again, spoiler, so skip ahead if you're interested in reading it. It was very much like, well, in any case, like, it's not a big deal, we're all gonna die in the end, so why waste time being tidy and making your life super organized? Which, like, yeah, it's true, but was a bit depressing and just, again, like a very small part of the book when I was expecting something much more positive. So yeah, this one was a bit of a miss for me. Moving on to audiobooks. I read Death of a Bookseller by Alice Slater, I think. Slater. So this is about two female characters working in a bookshop. The first one is Roach. She's a bit of an outsider. She's very much into true crime, and yeah, doesn't really fit in. And then she's not really interested anyway in just like fitting in and getting along with people. She's kind of her own person. But then Laura arrives at the bookshop and Roach starts to develop kind of a fascination for her, and she's really like curious about her in a way that's maybe a bit stalkery and obsessive. And I lived it at that. I enjoyed it. I think it was a good ride. It was not groundbreaking or anything for me. Again, it was just like fun. Next, I read Real Self-Care by Pooja Lakshmin. To be honest, I don't remember much about this book. I picked it up because it was, again, about self-care, so being burned out, that seemed like something that could be helpful for me. And it was really about the kind of no BS self-care kind of thing, so not the kind of criticizing a little bit the very consumerist self-care that get promoted on things like Instagram or things like that. And so this book is much more about self-care as an internal process and like self-reflection, self-knowledge, and kind of aligning with your values. So it was interesting, but I didn't remember much of it. I think probably because I was reading it as an audiobook. Next I read Goodbye Things by Fumio Sasaki. So this was an audiobook. I think in the physical book you might have some pictures in there. So I kind of missed out on that, but it was a very relaxing read. I quite enjoyed it. It was a pretty nice, pretty short and then sweet. So yeah, I quite liked it. And that kind of led me into a bit of a kind of decluttering, organizing kind of streak. So then I read The Year of Less by Kate Flanders. And this book is about how for 1 year the author decided to not buy anything new. And so she did a no buy year, which is very popular on YouTube at the moment. And she at the same time decluttered most of her possessions, and this is kind of her journey during a year and how it impacted her life. And I really loved that book. Yeah, more than I anticipated. I was just again kind of looking for another Goodbye Things kind of cozy, comforting read. I don't know why I find kind of decluttering books so comforting, but yeah, this one hit quite a bit. I don't want to spoil it, but kind of the last part about how that changed her life and kind of a career switch she was able to make, that really spoke to me. So yeah, I really loved it. I found it very impactful, and that actually led me to do a no buy month in December. So I would really recommend this one. I really enjoyed it. So next I read Declutter, the Get Real Guide to Creating Calm from Chaos from Deborah Robertson. And yeah, that was a very forgettable decluttering book. I can't tell you anything about it. Again, I was in my kind of decluttering book streak, but yeah, I don't remember anything about that one. Then I read Organized Chaos by Elizabeth Phillips. So Elizabeth Phillips is another YouTuber. She has quite a big channel and she has very, I think, really cool videos about kind of working with your own mind, and I don't know, if I feel I relate to a lot of it as a neurodivergent person. It's not like specifically or explicitly targeting neurodivergent people, but I think it would resonate with a lot of people who are neurodivergent. And this one was about kind of struggling with creating habits and being consistent, and kind of her own approach and models and tools to kind of use motivation. She says like motivation has a bad rep, and how she disagrees with that, and how she's kind of hamping up her motivation and channeling it to do the things that she wants to do. I thought that was a really interesting read. It's available as an ebook and as an audiobook. Next, I read Iron Flames by Rebecca Yarros. I really enjoyed this. It's not like a masterpiece. It's not the most beautiful literary writing that you can find, but it's a hell of a lot of fun. It was just like, yeah, fast-paced, very plot-heavy, romantic-y. I mean, it's a huge phenomenon, so I'm sure you've heard about it. So yeah, I had a good time. After that, I read Legends and Lattes from Travis Baldree. Again, a hugely popular book. This one is marketed as high fantasy, low stakes. It's a very cozy read, and yeah, it's a very loved book. I did enjoy it. It didn't rock my world. It was like, yeah, cozy, nice read. It was a fun time, but it didn't end up being a favorite for me, basically. And then the last audiobook that I read during that time was Art Matters by Neil Gaiman. This is a very short book, kind of compiling short writing pieces from Neil Gaiman, as well as one speech transcription that he gave, and all about kind of the importance of creativity and art. Again, that was a really nice read, in especially in a time when I was just like trying to reconnect with things that I love, and one of it obviously being creative. So yeah, it was a nice little sweet read. Okay, now moving on to the physical books that I read. I will start with the English ones, and then very quickly go through the French ones, because I imagine those are not the ones that are most relevant for an English-speaking audience, so I will go very briefly through those. So first I read Lyra's Oxford by Philip Pullman. I talked about his Dark Materials in my BookTube newbie tag video. It's basically, this series is among my favorite books of all time, so I was really excited to pick this one up. It's a short story set in the same world with the same main character Lyra and her demon. If you're a fan of his Dark Materials, it's just nice to meet with those characters again, see the world a little bit. Like, it's a small capsule of Oxford and that world. So yeah, if you're a fan, it's nice. Otherwise, I don't think it would be very interesting for most people. Next, I picked up The Subtweet by Vivek Shraya. This was recommended by Jen Campbell, who is another YouTuber, writer, book reviewer. I really enjoy her channel, and so I was inspired by her to pick this book up. And this book is about Neela Devaki, who is a singer, a little bit kind of underground, jazzy, all of that. And she's like a very good artist, but she's not getting the success that she thinks she deserves. But then one of her songs is covered by another artist called Rukmini, and it goes viral. And so this book is about kind of how the two characters get to know each other, how their worlds collide, the relationship that they build. It's very angsty, and kind of that almost frenemy type of relationship. It's about creativity, making art, being an artist. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was very smart, very nuanced in kind of the analysis of Neela's and Rukmini's relationship. So yeah, I would recommend. The next one was a reread for me. This is a book I read many years ago, and still thoroughly enjoyed. This is Pink Boots and a Machete by Mireia Mayer. So this author, she's just a badass. She started a career as an NFL cheerleader, but then she became a primatologist, and went on kind of crazy, wild and dangerous expeditions to observe like apes and primates. And then she went on to becoming, I think, the first National Geographic presenter? Yes, National Geographic Emerging Explorer. And yeah, so it's her autobiography, and it's just a fun read. It's just like following her into those expeditions and learning about those kind of rare species, how life is on the camp, all of that. I think it's also very much like a feminist book. It's like not necessarily like branded as that, but she's such an inspiration and such a badass. So yeah, that was a very fun ride. I would recommend. Next, I read The Bounded Queens by Parini Shroff. This is another recommendation from Jen Campbell's channel. And yeah, I mean, she has very good taste. I also thoroughly enjoy this. This one is about Geeta, who is thought to have killed her husband. Her husband disappeared, and the rest of the village thinks she killed him. And so that kind of gives her a bit of an aura in the village, and people are leaving her alone, which is very happy about. But then things get a bit more complicated when other women in the village come to her to help them also get rid of their husband. This was an excellent mix of like serious topics, a view of like the condition of women in rural India, but also a lot of fun. The author is just like has a very dark and sharp sense of humor. So yeah, this was really good. Okay, very different. I read Voici Venise. This one is available in many different languages. This is a book I got from the Acqua Alta bookshop in Venice, and it's a beautiful book about kind of the creation of Venice and how it's built on water. It's beautifully illustrated and super interesting. I think it's a beautiful object as well. It's a nice memory from the city. So yeah, it was a good one. Now I'm moving on into the books I read in French. Some of them might have a translation available. I'm not sure most of them do, so I'll try to go pretty quickly through them. So first we have By Heart by Tiago Rodrigues. This is translated from Portuguese by Thomas Rezendes. And this is a very short play that you can go through very quickly. I actually saw the play a few years back, really loved it. It really resonated. This is about Candida, who's Tiago's grandmother, and she's slowly turning blind, and so she's asking him to find the last book that she will read. And so this is about finding this book, learning it by heart so that you always have the book with you. It's about memory, literature. It's just a delight. So yeah, I would really recommend it if you can read it in French, Portuguese, or any other language that it's been translated into. Okay, one about writing. This is L'Urgence et la Patience by Jean-Philippe Toussaint. And this is a little book, non-fiction, like a little collection of essays mainly about writing. This is Un chemin de table by Maëlys de Kerangal. Her book, Réparer les vivants, which I think is translated as Mend the Living, is one of my favorite books of all time. And so I was really interested to pick this one up. A bit sadly, I really enjoyed reading some of the books that she've written around Mend the Living, but then after that, I don't know, I didn't really connect so much with her work. So this one was around that same period. It was an interesting read, not a new favorite, but I'm glad I went through it. So this is Regarde les lumières, mon amour by Annie Ernaux. She's a very well-loved French writer. She won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 2022, I think. So she's like well recognized, and she's a very successful author, and known for writing about the mundane, finding kind of the magic and the interesting things in daily life. This one is about supermarkets, and it was so interesting. I think, yeah, I was not really expecting to enjoy this as much as I did, but yeah, I found it very fascinating. She has a very easy to read style, so yeah, I'm sure a lot of her work is translated, so you can find her in your local bookshop. Alright, next I have a pile about neurodivergence. So the first one is Comme un oiseau dans un bocal, that would translate as like a bird in a jar, or like a fish tank, and it's about giftedness. It was really good. This is like a graphic non-fiction, very spot on about the experience of being a gifted person. I learned a lot about this, and yeah, it was a very good read. I don't think it's been translated, but if you read French, I would highly recommend. I really loved this. Then I continued my streak with another comic book. This is HPI, Une vie haute en couleurs. So this is about high intellectual potential. So again, like a fun, easy read. Quite enjoyed the graphic style as well. The next one is a bit more academic. It's from Céline Guibert, and it's about discovering your high intellectual potential when you're an adult and how that might trigger an identity crisis. That was interesting, but a bit, obviously being more academic, a bit more dry than the other two books that I talked about, so interesting, but I didn't enjoy it as much. Next, another book that's kind of graphic, so it's a mix of kind of non-fiction with illustrations. This is from Chloé Rominga. She has a blog about high intellectual potential, and so this is her first book about the topic. Okay, the last one on this topic is from Elodie Crépel. This is about multi-potentialite women, so women with a lot of interest, who might be like gifted or who might have ADHD, autism, like different form of neurodivergence, and it's very easy and quick to read. It's still packed with a lot of interesting insights. Yeah, I got a lot from it, really enjoyed it, so I would recommend if you read French. Okay, moving on to the last pile. I read Te plains pas, c'est pas l'usine, so that would translate as don't complain, it's not like working in a factory. This is from Lily Zalzet and Stella Finn, and this is about working in the non-profit sector and how that can be exploitative and like a very difficult environment to work in because of the kind of constraints on funding and the pressure to do something that's good for the world. It's super short, it's an essay obviously, and yeah, that was really interesting about kind of so this is for the French context, about kind of how the government is in a way outsourcing some of its responsibilities to non-profits, at the same time kind of cutting on the budgets and making it really hard for people who work in that sector. So yeah, that was a very interesting read. Next, this is a reread. This is Hell from Lolita Pil. This is a book I read when I was a teenager, I think, and at the time I really enjoyed it. This time not so much. This is about Elle, who's kind of renamed herself as Hell, little pun on her name. She's very jaded, very rich, kind of evolving in this world of just like partying and sex and drugs, and she meets a guy, Andrea, and they fall in love, and it's a big passion, but it's also a bit of a destructive relationship. So yeah, this is one of the books I will unhaul soon. But yeah, I reread Hell because I wanted to read Une adolescente, so a teenager, by the same author, Lolita Pil. And so this was presented as non-fiction, but then you read it and it says in the book that it's kind of autofiction, so you're not really sure what's true, what's not. But this is like, the way it's marketed for me felt like this was Lolita's story from when the book, her first book, Hell, came out, and she got a lot of backlash for it. People were kind of making horrible comments about her. People thought that basically she was her main character, and she's like from a very different background. That bit that was actually interesting to me, about how, like, as a female writer writing about those topics, she was very discredited and criticized, and how her work was not taken seriously. I was very interested in that, and that's only like 15 pages in the book, so I was pretty disappointed and was not really convinced by the writing otherwise. So yeah, that was a bit of a bummer. Okay, we're getting there. Another one that was not a huge hit for me was L'Arrangement by Gilles Vernet. So this is a bit of a thriller. It's kind of compared to Thelma and Louise, so I was quite excited about that. It's about two women working in a supermarket. They end up kidnapping their boss, and kind of the crazy ride that ensues. And yeah, again, there were things in there that I found a bit disturbing. Like, I was interested that this story was written by a man, to be honest, that I was curious about that. And yeah, I mean, I was not convinced, though. This one didn't hit for me. So yeah, I will unhold this. Next, I read the first 4 volumes of Arya. This is a manga about our main character who wants to be a gondolier on a new planet that resembles our own Venice. And so it's her story going through the seasons. It's very sweet, very wholesome. It was a nice read, a quick read, but yeah, not like didn't rock my world. So I was mostly interested in this because of the resemble with Venice. That's kind of what drew me to it. But yeah, again, it was a nice read, but just kind of didn't do anything crazy for me. This is Et à la fin il meurt, so in the end they die, by Lou Luby. It's the same author from the book that I recommended about high intellectual potential. It's a beautiful edition. It's also like non-fiction comic book. And this is about kind of the true story behind our fairy tales and where they come from, all the things that have been buried, and kind of how different like the Disney version is from the like true origin story of the fairy tale. So that was really interesting. Quite enjoyed it. Alright, the last book is La Distinction by Tiffaine Rivière. The Distinction by Pierre Bourdieu is listed as one of the top 10 books in sociology, so it's a big reference in that field. And so this comic book is fiction about a class learning about the distinction. So they're reading the book in class and kind of learning about it. It's all about how our taste is influenced by our socioeconomical background, and so they start questioning like, oh, do we really have freedom in what we like, and that kind of thing. It's very interesting. It was really well done. Made me want to read The Distinction by Pierre Bourdieu, but like it's 700 pages long or something, so I'm holding off on that for now. But would really recommend this one. Again, I don't think it's been translated, but if you read French, it's a really good read. I would recommend. Alright everyone, thank you so much if you've made it this far. Really appreciate having you here, and yeah, I hope this was interesting and that you got some, hopefully some book recommendations, and I hope to see you next time. Bye bye. Comics? Comics? Where do I put them? Being considered one of the top it's listed among like the top blah blah blah. Blah, 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 blah. Why do I ramble so much?